I'm gonna be honest with you though. You're not the first I have so many Venezuelan friends. I think every week I live in Chicago, I accumulate
Mm,
on average at least two new Venezuelan, American, or Venezuelan friends or people here.
okay.
And so living here for the last 10, 15 years, I've heard all kinds of stories from all kinds of people. No solo de gente de Caracas, gente de Maracaibo, gente del sur, por
Mm,
todos lados. Y también gente que vivieron en Chile antes, en Transmite, en España
mm,
antes. And like the crazy thing is that it is a black hole of navigating the politics of coming there, going back, living here, living there.
it's insane. It's
Families
like
are separated from each
limbo.
other, so it's not like people just
Yeah,
left and aren't going back. It's more like they left assets, they left relationships. And
yeah,
now the really shitty thing is that there are people that have been potentially involved in something, in some sort of
yeah,
activism in the past, and they
yeah.
have a target on their back. The government knows, and it's unsafe for them to basically try to take on any risk that is normal day activities to every American, such as trying to get a job in a industry or a profession that you might have a degree in, or you might be a doctor in, for that matter, or buying a home or
Mm,
getting married. And so it's just like it's just this very weird, effed up juxtaposition of what is happening in this country in terms of people that are saying the new governor is a socialist and this, that, the other. But it's like, no, un verano en Nueva York. It's like, no, this Blackstone thing happened, and then there was a targeted shooting last year with the United Healthcare executive.
right.
And then you have people like, you know, all of us immigrant families, whatever method you took to come here, it's like it's very, very not black and white, yet seen through tinted rose glasses on both sides. And it breaks my heart.
Yeah, it's really weird. I mean, like for example, I've never been illegal, which is like a crazy term because it depends on like it's like that could change at any time, like it did with weed or whatever. But never been. I've been in Europe and whatever, and I never exceeded my stay, like my visa or any nothing like that. I've never worked illegally, so it's like because of arbitrary, maybe not arbitrary, but just like a blanket decision where it affects everyone. Now I'm in that position. I mean, that doesn't make sense. So at least that's what the lawyers are, you know, uh, that's their one of their uh, uh, arguments, right?
Yeah.
There are others, and so yeah, we'll see what happens.
Yep.
Um,
How about we do this? I would love to keep chatting. I know it's late. Let's just get started. If you're cool with it, I'm just gonna kind of run this on uh,
yeah,
my
yeah,
note, and we'll talk.
yeah,
Just like having a conversation, you and I. So
yeah.
I'm gonna dedicate this though to the victims of the crash and also to some family members, if that's okay. That way,
Yeah.
you
I
know,
have a
it's
question. Can you hear me fine? Because I have like the
yeah,
air conditioning on.
yeah, it's great.
Okay.
It's great.
Okay. And then I'll probably like mute myself when
Okay,
you
sure,
start. So
perfect.
yeah, let's get started.
Okay,
I don't have anything really
no
to
need.
say.
Let's just go with it.
I mean, I might chime in.
Perfect.
Okay. Okay.
All
So
right.
we're good. So I'll start the recording.
Yep. All right. Hello, everyone, and we're back at it. Welcome to episode 1 of season 9 of the Airways Podcast. I'm Rohan Anand, co-founder, co-host, also with Helwing Villamizar, our amazing executive producer. And it's been a little while since we last recorded. So, Helwing, ¿cómo estás?
Todo bien. It's been I think almost a year probably.
Yep.
I know we've been doing a lot of things at Airways. We recently launched the new Airways digital platform. So that's been great because we have been wanting to do this for a while now. especially this year. And yeah, so actually I'm taking a hiatus from the day-to-day editorial for just a short time. But I do want to say that I'm happy that we're recording the Airways podcast again.
Yeah.
It's been long away.
Exactly. And I keep re-listening to old episodes more from recent seasons as opposed to previous ones, like from the way back beginnings. We're talking like June 2016 era. And the important thing is that not only does this allow us to connect, you, me, and Vinay, have our banter, I think we also just enjoy being able to discuss and talk about aviation. And it's less about the journalism and the reporting, and it's more about the conversing about what we're seeing. And I think that in that vein, it's really important to reiterate the value and the benefit of taking breaks. I've been through so many burnouts in my life, including my side hustles, like teaching yoga, recording this podcast, writing articles, traveling to write stories about airports and airlines and CEOs and meeting deadlines. And it's a lot. And I think that feeds really nicely into our topic for today on mental health, pilots, and aviation. And it also dovetails off of prior episodes that we've had, like with Merritt Gorder, if you recall, from October 2023, the first and only female pilot in Aruba. And we are also recording this episode on the 28th of July, 2025, which is also my parents' 44th anniversary. It's wild. Wow. Yeah, aviation runs in my family and my blood, and kind of in that vein, I kind of want to dedicate this episode to my family that has played a huge role in the history of aviation in India, including female members of my family as, my grandparents' age, and doctors, and engineers and lawyers are something that a lot of immigrant families aspire to have in their lives, and the skills and required trade that is necessary, requires you to push boundaries. And again, sometimes we neglect, the self-care as leaders. And so Captain Rakesh Anand and Captain Yash Anand, who are both my uncle and my cousin, are both either current or former pilots for Air India, 747, 737, 707, 787, 777, and Airbus 320 families. So this is a love letter to them as well. And I think that in that vein, we also want to maybe touch upon the Air India Flight 171 incident that took place on June 12th, 2025. Oddly enough, and kind of eerily enough, 40 years to the month of the Air India 182 flight that was bombed over the Atlantic Ocean in June of 1985 by a terrorist organization. And that was a horrible tragedy that resulted in over 300 deaths. It was so sad. A lot of children were on that flight. And then the incident that went down in Ahmedabad also claimed a lot of lives. And there was one survivor miraculously. It's harrowing that the imagery that we saw of that plane going down, especially a plane that had been in the fleet for Air India for so long, took place. It's one of those wild, wacky things too, where overwater landings and ditches, kind of can happen in such a manner where there could be some means to save lives. Unfortunately, the American Airlines incident that took place earlier this year didn't have that because that was a collision. But in this case, this aircraft went down in a highly condensed, urbanized area of India, and these airports in India and Pakistan, like what happened with the PIA crash of 2020, when they go down, they take down civilians as well, like what happened. Speaking of doctors, medicine, this was a building that were housing people studying medicine. It's really no different than a plane going down in Manhattan. So, with that said, there is a topic that has come out of this, and it is not a topic that we haven't talked about before, which is mental health, aviation, and pilots. And we talked about this on our episode with Merrick Gorder. We've talked about it in the capacity of some of the incidents like the German wings, one that was intentional. And now we're hearing all of this discussion about the captains and their profiles. One of aviation's greatest mysteries, if not the only greatest mystery, is Malaysia Airlines MS-370. That, again, the scrutiny has come down to the pilot and the pilot intentionality. Then Egypt Air 996 that took place in November 99, which was where the captain was saying, as they intentionally shut off everything, I belong to God, praying to Allah, and then boom. So it's a very highly stigmatized topic, mental health, just in general, let alone pilots, and the fear and the sort of reason a lot of pilots will tell you that they don't feel as empowered to discuss this is because any sort of indication that they may not be fit to fly gets scrutinized. They'd be in peril of losing their careers, especially if they're in a country not like the EU or the United States, where they're very strict and large and powerful label groups. We're talking like some of these private airlines in Southeast Asia or the Middle East or Africa, perhaps even Latin America, where it's way more ambiguous, and there's also kind of a brotherhood, sisterhood, whatever you want to call it, of pilots that work together, fly together out in the field. They're very distant and different from what is being done at corporate level, and this is all in the context of them having to live a life with or without their families, away, being in hotels, and having their skills on the job while they're flying. Yet sometimes a long flight with a long duration may feel like it's a lot of go, 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 and then it could be just very calm for a period, and you're sitting. And they say sitting is the new smoking. So, how are you able to move around? And Vinay, thanks for joining us. You look great.
Hey, what's up, guys? When was the last time I saw you guys on camera? Probably 7 months ago? 8 months ago?
Not really sure, actually.
Yeah, well, I lost like a bunch of weight.
Well, and welcome to New York. I am sad that you moved from Dallas, where I can't see you when I see my family, but I'm happy you moved to New York, where my other half of the family is. And the beautiful thing is that Helwing and I were just talking about New York and the incident that took place tonight in Blackstone building. My sister actually used to work in Blackstone for that company.
Wait, what happened tonight?
Oh, there was a shooter, another situation.
There was a shooter, yeah.
Yeah. And Vinay, by the way, we are recording live right now, so we're just going to keep going because I've done a pretty long soliloquy about mental health, aviation, Air India. That's the tee up for today. And
okay, cool. Let's maybe cut the portion where I walk into that.
Fair enough. So, really, Vinay, there's not much that I need to really say besides the tee up, and Helwing chime in here. But really, the concept is TLDR. People are talking now about the intentional engine shutoff situation. They're scrutinizing details over the pilot and their history. This is a very big and real talking point in the larger context of 2025 and airline and aviation disasters. Very curious to know what your thoughts are and reactions have been to this, especially because you, like I, are Indian American. We're dual citizens. We both have flown Air India hundreds of thousands of miles. We have family that work for Air India. I was booked on an Air India flight from Chicago to Delhi for my cousin's art show in the fall, and I have redacted that, and now I'm taking Air Canada instead, just because, and some Air India pilots themselves are even like, don't fly us. So I'm so curious to know what your thoughts are.
Yeah, well, I think first and foremost, I'll probably note that I've flown on VP-ANB, like on that 787 before.
That's eerie.
Which is eerie.
Wow.
You know, I think so. There's always like kind of two sides. Like I do think that there's a pretty genuine risk factor, right, in aviation, right? And I think that the thing that's tricky, right, is that like pilots have so much dominion and so much control over aircraft at the end of the day, right? That's how our system is designed and kind of configured. That when something goes wrong, that's a place where it can go wrong, in part because regulators and airlines and aircraft manufacturers have done so much to make aircraft and air travel safer. And I think that pilot sort of well-being and pilot mental health is one of the real remaining risk factors. There's obviously others. We saw kind of with the American Airlines crash back in, was that February or January? Time is a flat circle.
It was January 30th, I believe.
January 30th, yeah. Also, eerie story, I was scheduled to fly into DCA that night.
Ooh. It was a chilly, icy evening.
It was a chilly, icy evening. Though I think, again, you know, without sort of beating a dead horse, right, I think a lot of the pain there was the absolutely absurd airspace management protocols and the kind of interplay between military aviation and commercial in the DC area. But all to say, like, I do think that, like, pilot mental health is a very, very real risk. But here's the thing, right? So again, I was on a flight that was going to fly into DC. And since that moment, I have taken probably another 70 commercial flights this calendar year. So part of it for me is I always sort of reason from the preponderance of the evidence. And the preponderance of the evidence still suggests, obviously there are very real things that have to be addressed, that air travel is overwhelmingly safe. Every time I get in an Uber, every time I get behind the wheel of a car, even adjusting for all of these risk factors, I am still an order of magnitude more at risk and more in danger than I am when I get on a plane. Whether it's flown by Air India, whether it's flown even in, you know, Nepal and some of the places that have the most dangerous kind of air travel setups in the world. So I think there's a very real conversation to be had about sort of pilot safety and pilot mental health, and to think about kind of redundant systems that can be built into aircraft to reduce this risk. But I don't think it has changed my willingness to get on a plane, if that makes sense.
Sure. I think that most people probably feel that way. Let's hone in on what you mentioned about pilot mental health and the shift from the conversations from before. And I referenced Merritt Gorder, who was on the podcast in October 2023. She was the first and only female pilot in Aruba. Check out that episode. And I raised the question of mental health, and she said, "Thank you for asking that question." And I remember just having a very, candid conversation with her, which I think she said, "Thanks for acknowledging this. We're all doing our best. I live in Aruba where it's a small, tight-knit family, and we kind of look out for each other here. That goes with the spirit of Aruba. But who's to say that's the same situation at Air Canada? You know, there are some of the greatest aviation mysteries of Egypt Air 990 and Malaysia Airlines MH370 that really are attributed to a pilot deciding to go down, perhaps even thinking that it could be disguised even as a tragic accident that happened versus a intentional attempt to unalive oneself or unalive others along with them by doing something as black and white and drastic as shutting off engines. And not just what may have happened leading up to the circumstances or what might be waiting for them on the ground, more so what their co-pilot and their fellow cabin crew are thinking or going through in the same moment along with the people like air traffic control, the cabin crew, the passengers, dispatch, tracking, everyone that is going about their daily life trying to ensure that the plane makes it off the ground safely and into the skies safely and continue moving the ball down the field like they would just do on any ordinary day.
Yeah. I think definitely. And there's other examples, right? Like I think Germanwings Flight 9525, for example. For all we know, by the way, right, there's a long history of aircraft crashes before the sort of widespread deployment of the black box or cockpit recorders or so on and so forth. For all we know, some chunk of those aircraft incidents were also caused by this. And I think that's one thing that when you think about kind of aviation safety in 2025, right, there's some very real things that have gotten discreetly worse across the last 5 years or the last 10 years, right? Whether that is air traffic control staffing and underinvestment in air traffic control infrastructure, whether that is sort of pilot staffing and kind of this it's called strained relations and sort of working conditions that many pilots face. But there is also just an additional layer of information, right? Both information and I would say just as importantly, if not more importantly, misinformation as it relates to aircraft incidents and sort of aviation safety. And I think in the same ways that social media has really destabilized all aspects of life, from politics to culture to gender relations to pretty much anything you can think of, I also
Congrats on your new mayor, by the way.
I also think that it has really meaningfully destabilized people's perceptions of aviation and airline safety, because in the past, right, yes, you obviously had sensationalism and news coverage, heavy news coverage around aircraft crashes, but that is distinct from tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions of people opining in real time without perfect or even any information about what happened, the causes of what happened, the ways in which and then you pair that with the ways in which the underlying algorithms that drive what actually shows up in people's feeds and in people's information diets is driven not necessarily by accuracy or correctness, but rather by what is most likely to draw in engagement. I think you have a sort of a recipe and a cocktail for people to overreact to lots and lots of things. Like, for the very first time, I had people asking me, hey, is it safe to fly out of Newark? And I'm like, I've been on 12 flights out of Newark since they announced that they needed to cut back on flights. Like, what are you talking about? Yes, of course it's safe to fly out of Newark. But, like, actually, I think have had their brains sort of, like, earwormed, I guess, by the like a toxoplasma of misinformation is like too strong a word, right? And like we've always spent a lot of time around people that actually are sort of like thoughtful, considered experts who very closely try to analyze and reason about aviation safety, and that is not the default person's experience of reporting and news and information on aviation safety. It's some Twitter anon who posted a snarky tweet about like pilots with a certain background and got 700,000 chuds to like retweet it, and that's kind of their default experience of it. So,
wow. Also, I have to say, I love your background. Are you in a hotel room or is that your apartment?
I'm in a hotel room. You'll have to save my apartment view for the next episode that we record.
I can't wait.
I'm in a hotel.
Our first live episode. I'll probably come to New York in very soon. You know, while there's not necessarily a structure to this podcast episode, I do want to say that one life update that I have had is that in the past year, I've started traveling a lot more for work. And so I have officially received my tags. I am United Premier Gold, baby. Traveling to Tulsa, Oklahoma, and Washington, D.C. on the CRJ 550. That gets you gold. So I guess I have kind of quasi dipped my toe back into the loyalty game, but this time it's less from an av geek / leisure perspective and more from a like truly business travel perspective. And my former employer, United Airlines, they are slaying the game. I am back on the drug. It's like United, I would describe, is like my relationship with Kesha. They're like, just sliving. I mean, like, this is cool. Welcome to the club. Like, American Airlines does not do that. Southwest does not do that. Delta has done it, and that's what United's aiming for.
Maybe Southwest will, now that they're,
Yeah, and that's why it's so good to be back, because we have so many things we're going to talk about. This is season 9, Vinay. We've been doing this
season
9 years.
We definitely had the longest possible hiatus this time around, mostly my fault.
Yeah.
I think COVID kind of wrecked with it. Also, when I was in business school / when I was working for United in network planning, and I was
we definitely have had the most inconsistent of times.
But that's kind of how podcasts are. I feel...
Yeah, I mean, I think that I wanted to mention that perhaps for our listeners, that we could just, for now, mention that this will be an occasional podcast. So it's not going to be like a weekly. It could be. So
podcasts are like books or like stories. They're just audible, visual nuggets of discourse.
Yeah.
We'll work on the video version.
And there's so many other podcasts. We know you have your choice of podcasts, and we thank you for listening to Airways. We just hide behind the Airways brand because, people actually do listen to our stuff.
Yeah. This is a non-recording sidebar. Are we just talking about pilot mental health plus general catch-up, or did we have another topic that we wanted to cover?
Well, I wanted to mention, just to close the rumor mill, I wanted to mention, like, the report was kind of obfuscated a few things. Like, the report did mention serviceability of the engines, and I don't know, that kind of also, caused a little bit of confusion. And then we can close that part. I don't know what you think, Rohan. What else could we talk about?
Yeah, is there something else we want to talk about? We have...
It doesn't have to be long.
We can just gab a little bit. We can gab about stuff.
I think that we should do one more commercial aviation topic. Maybe we'll talk about Delta and buying something in a second.
Let's do it. I'm game.
Okay.
But before that, so Rohan, not to respond to your wonderful news of finally reachieving United status with an appendage measuring contest, but as of yesterday, I'm officially at 1K and executive platinum and whatever the second highest level of Mosaic is, and diamond medallion so far in calendar year 2020.
Daddy, you don't need that U Chicago degree. You got literally the bank of the Big Four.
And then
Dead
on
ass.
the hotel side, I have Marriott.
That's just the airline side.
And
Wow.
Globalist and
See, I'm a one-trick wonder. You are all over the specter.
okay, I have flown 91 flights and 170,000 miles so far this calendar year. So,
Hey, man, I love it for you. And I love the way you look, too. You look like you've been taking good care of yourself. I remember when we first recorded the episode in June 2016, Vinay was coming into Dallas, and he said to me, real talk though, I have to make sure that you live close enough to an Equinox. And I was like, are you for real? is Vinay that kind of like pretentious person that needs an Equinox? Ironically, in coincidence, I actually happened to be a member of the Equinox in Highland Park or what Uptown Dallas, whatever. I was that.
It was always your spiritual destiny.
Yeah, and that was then. This is now. I'm now LA Fitness, so we've come full circle here. But basically, Vinay's obsession with his, kind of healthy habits and needing to have that routine structure in there, I was like, mad respect. I got your back.
Yeah, it didn't necessarily pay off for a long time. But,
well, right. I'm happy to be back with y'all.
Congratulations.
Yeah, 5 minutes a day. I'm not going crazy on that.
That's definitely the pinnacle of
for me it is.
Fitness.
For me it is.
Yeah.
All right. So let's round up the Air India conversation and then let's go to Delta. 787's bonus.
Yeah, I mean, I just wanted to mention that, it is the first fatal accident of the Boeing 787 Dreamliner, and so I know that's probably the lesser, it's not as important or critical to speak of. But there was kind of like a controversy that I read where the preliminary findings had generated significant debate in the aviation community. Chris Smith mentioned, author for Airways and the pilot, that the report didn't mention any type of information regarding the serviceability of the engines, when the switches were changed or updated or maintained last. So that can that is conducive to hearsay and rumor, right? So the report focuses on the fuel cutoff for sure. But at the end of the day, according to sources, according to the Wall Street Journal, I'm not sure. Early analysis of the cockpit voice recorder suggested the first officer was flying the aircraft asked the captain why he had moved the fuel switches. Now, I don't think you can surmise this from the report, but the report did mention that the FAA conducted its own analysis of the fuel control systems and concluded that there was no evidence of mechanical failure or inadvertent switch movement. So it's just like I don't know. And I understand the federation, the International Federation of Airline Pilots Association in India, when they cautioned against hasty conclusions. And I do understand that. I also understand that, it's not common to speak of mental illness in India. I don't know if that's true or not when you compare it to UK or the US. But I guess that's what I'm trying to say, that the overall conclusion or people's consideration of the preliminary report is that, I don't know, it wasn't up to snuff. Then again, It's a preliminary, right? I mean, it takes a year, if not more.
Well, I think this ties in with the point I was making about the velocity of information. People are used to getting information at their fingertips on demand, right? And the rise of sort of ChatGPT, which will make up something even if it doesn't have the information and give you an answer instantly, has only exacerbated that, right? And I think that, like, the challenge that you run into, right, is, like, precisely because of how complex and interconnected aviation is as a system, right? Truly determining and teasing out what actually caused an accident or an incident is something that takes a lot of time because it takes a really, really thorough, considered investigation. And people want answers, and they want answers quickly, and that's at tension with actually finding what caused an accident or what caused an incident. And so that, like, tension, I think, you're hitting on another aspect of this. Some of it is sort of the the speculation around the pilots and their state of health and their sort of mental health, right? State of mind and mental health, rather.
Yeah.
But some of it is just, hey, we haven't had enough time to like really uncover and unturn all of the different and turn over rather all the different aspects of what went wrong here.
Yeah.
And you could eventually find that, hey, pilot action played a role or it didn't, that aircraft maintenance played a role or it didn't, that aircraft design played a role or it didn't, right? Like all of those things are still very much within the universe of possibilities, right? Doctor Strange
100%
with the 4,000.
Yeah.
Right. And the honest answer is we don't know.
Yeah. You can only speculate.
Everyone wants to know and they want to know now.
Yeah.
And that there's something just like fundamental tension in there that you know,
speaking of
we reckon with properly.
Yeah, speaking of tension, I mean, like Kylie Minogue on the tension tour, she should be the spokesperson for Air India, which actually, jokes aside, what I think people want to take away also in the aviation community, and we here, us esteemed people of the Airways Podcast, the ripple effect is real, and the brand perception and reputation is real. It's crazy, as you mentioned, that Air India, this takes time. I mentioned earlier the bombing of AI Flight 182, the one that went from Montreal to London to Delhi to Mumbai, that was bombed off the coast of Ireland by terrorist groups based out of Canada, radical separatists that wanted to perpetuate acts of terrorism against a Hindu or Indian nationals. And the Indo-Canadian relations were already strained, and it's become a constant topic of strain. That just is this very strange, bizarre triangle between Vancouver, Toronto, and the state of Punjab. And the arrests and the, process by which, RCMP of Canada and India, it just became a whole thing, and it's still ongoing as a topic of discussion. Fast forward to what we're dealing with today, not in 1985, but 2025. We have Tata Group that is involved with Air India. Singapore Airlines, Vistar has been merged in. AirAsia India has been moved in. This Vihan AI concept that is all about the Jana Hindustan, let's go Air India, we're going to make it happen, Maharaja on fleek. The really kind of jarring thing to me is that this is more than just Air India trying to get its groove back. This is more than Air India being this joke that people love to troll on social media, or in India where people, like Air India is perceived as the spirit and frontier of India. And, you have Campbell Wilson, and you have the, kind of conglomeration of different airlines and different leaders and leadership styles and cultures that are now becoming this massive Air India brand that has to work with Indian aviation and Indian airports and be the flag carrier of India, and then Star Alliance. And I look at all of this and I'm like, it's bigger than all of that. This involves Boeing. This involves the 787. And how will Air India come back from this? How will they move forward from this? How will their leadership, who have been kind of trolled for handling this disaster in a way where they kind of co-opted Robert Isom's speech from American Airlines and used that script. It also exposes another thing about aviation that the common public doesn't know about, which is disaster response and recovery, and what protocol are in place.
Yeah, I mean, aviation is probably the most demanding crisis response PR comms industry that exists, right? Short of like, FEMA, right? Like they probably have the most aggressive kind of advanced protocols around that. I do think that what you're calling out is very, very real, though, in that, like, Air India, yeah, and yes, there were fits and starts, and yes, there were plenty of YouTube review videos that called out the old school 777s and 787s that had, a questionable product. But Air India had some real momentum and some real tailwinds, right? They were starting to move the needle and kind of change the brand perception. The aircraft orders helped with that. The fact that the combination of both new cabins, and I think we've even talked about this on some of our past episodes, both on the standalone Air India jets and on some of the secondhand 777s that they acquired in from places like Etihad and Singapore, they had some real momentum and some real tailwinds. And now you take another look at it and, hey, these types of disasters, especially to the degree that the narrative takes hold that this was Air India caused and not Boeing caused or sort of like aircraft caused.
Engines,
right? And to the degree that that's kind of where the narrative settles, I could see this being like a real speed bump, right? I don't think that the long-term trajectory necessarily changes, right? Again, you go back long enough and Korean Air has a checkered history with aircraft safety, right? So time sort of heals all wounds, but, aircraft crashes have brought down airlines before, right? TWA, was it 96?
800.
Right? TWA 800, which was in 1996.
Yeah.
Absolutely probably had a meaningful impact on their trajectory.
Yeah.
The ValueJet crash.
Aloha Airlines.
The airline's brand name, yeah. So there's some very, very real risk here. And, the other piece to call out is that Indigo just is a all-consuming, non-stop kind of machine. It's now
for a machine, it won't take my credit card because I'm trying to make a booking for an internal domestic flight in August, but that's a different discussion. Navitaire.
It's not a machine for...
Navitaire, it's your former employee.
Like,
help me out.
It's a machine for Indians in India.
Yes.
And so I think from that perspective, that's where I would say that, there's some real risk here. Now, I think it's too early to say that it's going to be a permanent scar or anything like that, but there's some real risk here, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. And let's bring it up a level. What about Tata Group and Singapore Airlines?
I think Singapore Airlines will be fine. They're, currently in the midst of record profitability, and this is not, core to their financials or to their balance sheet. I think for the Tata Group too, because there's not that much debt on the balance sheet, ultimately this was, this is reasonable, and they're definitely losing less money than if they had just been Vistara by itself. So I think they'll be fine. But and the Tata Group is so diversified and so widespread across every possible sector of the Indian economy that even if Air India were to go belly up, I don't think it would meaningfully change their sort of trajectory, right? They're a national champion for India in the same way that, like, Samsung
GE
is a national champion. Even GE it's not quite the same valence, right? Because Samsung gets sort of like...
Well, Samsung to Korea, yes, absolutely. Korea, yeah. I see where you're going with that.
Favorable government treatment and placement and market access.
Got it.
And something like that very much happens with the Tata.
Forward to America.
They're doing what they can, right? I mean, the Tata Group and they established a support system for the families, the affected families, and compensation. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's so a memorial, I think.
Yeah.
Welfare Trust. So, I mean, what else can you do, right?
Right. We honor them. We honor the people that took the videos and TikToks and stuff. Like, the world has become av geeks. Do you all know that? People listen to this podcast because they like aviation, they like travel. It is the democratization of travel has created an allure and a means by which that people now have access to the world. And you see things like queer couples from England that are backpacking in India, taking their jolly flight back to the UK from Ahmedabad. This wasn't even the Air India flight from Toronto to Montreal to London was like a signature Air India route in 1985. Okay? We want to get geeky with this. This Ahmedabad to London Gatwick flight, this is the Gatwick flight. This is like Air India doing point-to-point-ish from like Ahmedabad and Cochin and Goa and Amritsar sometimes to Gatwick. When we had Abudi Nazar on here from Stansted Airport, I think in 2020 from pre-pandemic days, like Air India was flying to London Stansted. Like outside of India, Air India's most important and lucrative value prop have to be its slots and access to Heathrow first, JFK second, and San Francisco,
Yeah, but San Francisco isn't really slot controlled, right?
No, it's not.
You can get access to San Francisco.
No. But Toronto, Vancouver, huge for them. And, it's had the ripple effect across the route map because geopolitical situation in India has caused also the westbound flights from Delhi to Toronto, Chicago, and DC, I believe, to have to go through Vienna for refueling. So if I had kept my original itinerary flying Chicago to Delhi nonstop, I was doing it in the back of the bus in October, it would have been a 15-hour flight plus. Because when I took the United nonstop Chicago-Delhi flight that existed in 2022, one way, it was, I think, roughly the same length, barring the Russia overflight ban. On the return, though, United had to cull that route because it just was, especially in the winter, not economically nor operationally feasible for them to fly a 789 from Delhi to Chicago or San Francisco, avoiding Russian airspace. It made more sense for them to just stick with Newark. They even added a second Newark frequency. That was too much. And now Air India, for all those years, had the monopoly on the Chicago-Delhi nonstop flight, even with the Russian airspace stuff. But because things are messy now between India and Pakistan and other countries, Air India is literally having to fly over the Gulf and then around and up through Mumbai to get to Delhi. It's like super weird. Air India in Delhi, especially.
I think there's a thematic shift, right, over the course of the 9 years that we've been doing this podcast, of geopolitics has returned with a vengeance to impact commercial air travel, right? You flash back to 2016, right? Like, I think we started the podcast before Brexit, if I'm not mistaken, and before the sort of election of Trump.
Yeah.
And since that moment, the geopolitics of all kinds of strengths, obviously the conflict and war has impacted, most notably kind of with Russian overflight, Russia and Ukraine directly as air travel markets. The Middle East has seen tensions. India and Pakistan have seen tensions. Even beyond that, right, like U.S. trade policy has impacted air travel patterns and demand curves and things like that. So geopolitics has returned with a vengeance, and the sort of like, let's say, never-ending trend towards one-way march towards more international interconnectivity, whether that's economic, travel, or otherwise, has definitely hit us at a speed bump.
I think that's the title for today's episode. Geopolitics has returned with a vengeance and it's affected global travel. Kylie Minogue, the Global Tension Tour.
So just last sort of non sequitur thought on this. Last 5 minutes here. I know we're all, we've mostly covered kind of Air India today, but as we start to talk a little bit more about kind of airline routes and commercial, get back into kind of the commercial side of things. One thing I've been dying to talk to you guys about since we figured out that we were going to actually bring this back is Phoenix, right? Little old Phoenix Sky Harbor now has 2 transpacific routes.
Phoenix is the new Seattle. Taipei, baby.
And not just transpacific routes, from Phoenix to Taipei, right? You have the
Ontario.
sort of tag service from China Airlines, paired with one of their LAX flights. And then you have Starlux flying, I believe, nonstop.
Yep.
And what is my first reaction? Like, what's happening?
My theory is it's more than just semiconductors in Phoenix. It's truthfully China. China, because of what has become geopolitics, the absence of Chinese airlines and low-cost airlines flying to the North American region has created a nice little bump for the other East Asian countries, namely Japan, Korea, South Korea, Taiwan, the Philippines even. Manila is hot. And even Hong Kong to a lesser degree. Like Cathay Pacific is like going at it. Like, and you're seeing airlines like United, adding a lot of Asia Pacific capacity that is not China oriented. You're seeing Japan Airlines and All Nippon like doubling down on both Narita and Haneda. Delta and Korean Air for Seoul. And then, of course, Taipei is so hot right now, and you have 3 airlines. I mean, the consolidation of 2 airlines in South Korea has taken like the longest time ever between Asiana and Korean Air, but it's happening. Japan, I think they'll remain separate, but in Taipei, you still have the duking it out between EVA and China Airlines, and now you got Starlux that everyone.
And Starlux is sort of birthed from the fruit of the poison tree, right? The Starlux founder was originally at EVA Air.
Yeah.
Or EVA, sorry. Because I believe the correct pronunciation.
Yeah, EVA.
I learned.
I like EVA too.
Video. EVA is, I believe,
the correct
they
one.
Want to be referred to themselves. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I do think that the sort of the Taipei to Phoenix route, I think, is a little distinct in that your point about, hey, in general, we're seeing a lot more trans-Pacific flying that's not touching China, in part because the Chinese carriers are not in a bunch of American cities offering deeply discounted fares to connect all over Asia. So I'm sure that plays a role in how lucrative trans-Pacific service is. The U.S. carriers also are turning increasingly to East Asia as the transatlantic market has become saturated, as Latin America has become reasonably saturated, right? Especially because part of what drives it, right, more broadly, and this is why, United has gone gangbusters across the Pacific, why Delta, just announced the addition of LAX Hong Kong, is because transatlantic is so hot in kind of the northern summer, you need places to fly the planes to park them, essentially, in the winter. And there's only so much Latin America you can do before you're trying to figure out how to land a 767 at Cusco, right? So on some level, I think that has played a role in the general kind of boom and resurgence of trans-Pacific travel. I think Instagram, to be honest, has probably played a role because, in our kind of post-pandemic leisure travel world, Asia is definitely more sort of Instagram friendly and less played out.
White Lotus.
Than Rome. It's a more fun destination for the girlies, as it were.
The girlies.
And just to be clear, by girlies that is non-gendered. Rohan and I are also girlies. But anyway, sorry, go ahead, Helwing.
Yeah, but what about the high value cargo? I mean, because it's true. How much cargo can you send South America, as opposed to right now with all these big investments in semiconductors?
Yeah, I think cargo is a big driver, right? And I'm sure Phoenix Airport ponied up because they've long coveted Trans-Pacific service. I think for a long time they were trying to work on the sort of American JAL-Tokyo nexus.
Yeah.
And it didn't work, in part because I think American Airlines doesn't really have an Asia strategy. Sort of squint at it, right?
But, I'm actually going to not challenge you, yes, and you, halfway. Shout out to, I think, our girlies at Dots, Lines, and Destinations, DLD. That's Seth Miller, Steven Seagraves, and Faz Mahmood. They were talking about how in this whole Delta Hong Kong and situation, the truth of the matter is American actually has more dots in Asia, East Asia, than Delta does. And it's wild to me.
Is that true?
Apparently.
Are they including the South Pacific? Because obviously American...
I don't think so, no. Just APAC.
All right, we're keep going. I'm going to fact check this. Give me a second.
I could be wrong. They said there's something about that in a recent episode. Yeah, you're absolutely correct. I mean, Delta has, my gosh, they inherited that Northwest Airlines Asia Pacific assets. And Vinay, you and I still have to do a deep dive podcast that we'll do on Northwest Airlines someday. But like Northwest Airlines was largely an international airline, like a United, essentially up until the 80s. When it then became merged with Republic, that's when they got the domestic hubs of Memphis and Minneapolis, St. Paul, and Detroit, which then was able to feed into the Asia network and beyond in Europe in the JV with KLM. And then you had all of these dots, lines, destinations that Northwest brought to the table for Delta, not just from the Midwest, but also even from the West Coast and from Hawaii and from New York and others, that has really just been kind of filtered down. Delta doesn't, I mean, they still have some Detroit linkages, but like they haven't flown, they canned Manila. They're doing stuff out of Seattle, and I'm sure that that's, you know, kind of where they're going to put their eggs for whatever. But now they have to try to make a comeback in LA. They have to make a play in LA because United has been very like, not only do we got San Francisco, which is the Trans-Pacific gem of the world, but we can also do LA, like despite and EWR and ORD like inability to fly to the Asia Pacific because of the Russia situation.
I see an episode or a series of episodes which is history. Linking the past or history with.
I think that would be a lot of fun. Just to close the needle on the fact check.
Oh yeah.
It's the kind of thing that's like technically true, but in practice not really true. Okay, so here's kind of the full list, right? So both airlines fly to Pudong, both airlines fly to Incheon, right? So Shanghai and Seoul.
Yeah.
Both airlines fly to Haneda.
Yeah.
Because American splits its Tokyo operation across Haneda and Narita, for the moment, American has more destinations. Delta has more. American has more destinations in East Asia than Delta does. Now, the other thing that they could be including is India, right? Because obviously American has their JFK Delhi flight.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't really consider that East Asia. It's not exactly the same thing.
Yeah.
And
they also have the New York Haneda flight that's relatively new. And JAL has recently re-added Chicago to Narita. So, like, American kind of, like, gets away with it.
Oh, and sorry, Delta also goes to Taipei. So now I'm really, really confused as to where this
maybe I'm misspeaking. We'll ask the Gorleys for some
clarification. So sorry, they must be including Delhi because Delta also goes to Taipei.
Yeah.
I forgot about that.
Delhi is really interesting. Sometimes it's categorized in the transatlantic category. Sometimes it's not. Like, I mean, and I think that largely has to do with JVs and JV purposes. Like, when I worked at United, for example, Mumbai and Delhi were considered Atlantic, not Trans-Pacific. I'm sure that had a lot to do with, like, the A++ with Air Canada and United and Lufthansa. So that's all public information. Anything I share here is public. So I think that actually might be a nice little segue into the Delta 787 order. And I think that one of the longest running topics on airliners.net, shout out to our Gorleys at airliners.net, the original TikTok and Instagram of the world where all of the rabbits gather to dish out the latest tea. For the longest time, there was that thread on when will Delta add LAX to ORD? Well, it's happening. When will Delta finally admit that it regrets canceling Northwest Airlines 787 order? Well, it's happening. Northwest Airlines was actually going to be the launch operator of the 787 in the US, I believe. I'm not sure in the world. That might still have gone to All Nippon. And fun fact, I flew on the All Nippon 787-8 before the battery situation from Seattle to Narita. That was a trip going to Manila. All roads lead to Manila. So yeah, the trending topic that will never die is Delta 787s. And humor me for a second. Like, yeah, I get it. Like, Delta had one commonality of a fleet type with Northwest when they merged, which was the 757. So adding another family into the fleet, pretty rough. We also know that the 787-8 is kind of like the 767-200 in the sense that it is the first iteration of that aircraft. The real hump comes from the Dash 9 and the Dash 10 iteration, whether it's by cargo, freight, or by passenger, or both, or distance, or range, or cabin, cockpit layout, whatever. So the Dash 8s that Delta may have potentially gotten would have been designed for all kinds of plausible routes that we can talk about in our hypothetical episode, Vinay and Helwing. The question I have is, the rumor is back about Delta and 787s. What's it going to be? If it's not the 8s, is it going to be the 9s? Will it include the 10s?
The 10s, maybe. I mean, why not the 10s? Obviously, I mean, the secrecy to me is because, they canceled that 787 order with Northwest, right? So I guess, I don't know. I mean, maybe competitive sensitivity, so, the competition doesn't do anything, they jump to changing their order, fleet, or, new fleet order. I don't know. I'm not sure. But it's a topic that we get down to I don't know. Again, part of the rumor mill. We love to discuss rumors.
So, I guess for filler conversation right now, the 787 Delta order speculation, I actually haven't really paid that much attention to it. Candidly speaking, I know that Delta is going to get Airbus 350-1000s that will complement its A350-900 fleet. So from a capacity and cargo and even range perspective, they have that part down. What exactly will the 787 bring to the fleet that Delta needs? And I think that is where Boeing comes into the picture, because not only did Delta retire all of its Boeing 777 aircraft right around the pandemic and took those frames out, but also Delta relies heavily. Yes. Keep going, Helwing. You're onto something. What do you think?
Well, I mean, like, they're expected to start the 767-300ERs, that retirement, right? Before the end of this decade. So
yeah,
I think they're gearing up for that.
And it's a pilot thing too. It's a demand thing, and it's a skills and certification thing. I mean, like, 767 and 757 aircraft are old and expensive to maintain and to train and to operate.
Okay, my internet came back. you
ju-
guys already run through everything?
we are talking
Talked
about
about the.
the. There's an echo.
I mentioned the 767 retirement, and I don't know what else. I mean, like, why would they do that? The fleet diversification.
Well, so
Boeing,
Vinay,
Airbus.
I'll tee it up for you. So the Delta 787 rumor is so fascinating to me because there was the cancellation of Northwest's order. There has been the continuation of using 767s and 757s, which are common fleet type for a lot of Delta's international, I don't want to say long haul, but kind of long haul, wide body, transatlantic capacity, trans-Pacific capacity, that they're doing right now without 777s. And then the third most point is Delta has A350s, including 900s and 1000s that are on order. So how does the 787 come into the picture for Delta? And with, as we know, a canceled 8 means 9, I'm listening, 10, you have my attention.
I actually think they're more likely to take advantage of and benefit from the 9 versus the 10. I mean, the 10 is a really efficient aircraft, right? It is the most efficient way to carry 300 to 330 passengers up to 6,000 miles, right, on a wide body route. But I think the 9 is really the hole in Delta's, right? Because the A330-900 is their sort of like 240 to 280 seat solution, and it doesn't have the range to meaningfully open up longer and thinner destinations, right? Whereas, here's the thing, the 8 is the ugly red-headed stepchild, but it's also a 220 seat wide body with the ability to fly up to 7,000 miles or up to 8,000 miles in certain cases. And that is a useful function at a place for both American and United, right? It allows them to fly routes that Delta cannot, right? Delta tries a lot of stuff over the Pacific, over the Atlantic that they cannot over the Pacific or even in South America when you take some of the hot and high characteristics into consideration. So I don't think airlines are ordering the 8 these days, right? In part because the 9 has basically the same trip costs at lower sort of seat costs. But the 8s, when depreciated, once you've bought them, they're a great tool. You just wouldn't make the decision to buy them on paper now in 2025. But I think actually the 9 is where Delta's going. Because the A350-900 and the 330-900neo do a more than excellent job of fulfilling transatlantic and South American flying. The 9 is the hole in Delta's fleet. And then separately, to the degree that they're embedded entirely within the Airbus ecosystem, you do lose some pricing power. Now, for all we know, this is just a ploy to get Airbus to bring the price point down on more 359s or more 330-900s. But I do actually think that the 787-9, an aircraft that can fly San Francisco to Singapore nonstop or any route of that length nonstop, is a useful tool that Delta doesn't really have access to, right? The A350-900 is 30 to 40 seats larger than 787-9, and that difference changes the types of markets that you can try. And there are a lot of markets, by the way. A lot of those South Pacific markets, I think, would do better for Delta on a 787-9 because there's enough competition and they're sort of long and thin enough that you are better off with a 787. And Delta is a large enough airline that it can come to profit in the A350 class. So on that note, it has been an absolute pleasure to record with you guys for the first time in 9 months.
Yeah, for sure. Hey, just one question. When you travel, since you travel a lot internationally, how do you deal with phone bill? Like, do you have an eSIM and do you exchange, like, what?
I use a Rollo, and we're not sponsored, but we'd obviously welcome it. I use a Rollo, and they do a pretty good job with the eSIMs, right? I've been able to get an eSIM pretty much everywhere in the world that I go.
Where are you right
My
now?
travel is also domestic. I'm in DC.
Oh, okay. I was there in June last month for World Pride.
Well, I think then it's good to hear from our new sponsors, eSaily from NordVPN. They have this new product that we want to.
We are sponsored.
Let me go through the whole Rollo thing. Well, now I gotta say Daily. Like, okay.
Well, I
Auntie.
think it's the perfect opportunity.
Mashallah.
So we'll hear from them.
We're sponsored. I'm so thrilled. We're sliving. We're absolutely sliving. We're on brand. We are those girlies, social media. We're having fun, talking about airlines. We're celebrities. And we're aunties. And yes.
So I'm going to tell them to send us a few of those, or I don't know how that works. So and then you can try it out and see the difference.
Okay, all right. Well, I'll have to report back on the differences between a Rollo and eSaily. Okay, yeah.
Yeah. Well, the Airways Podcast literally started out of a hotel room in Dallas, Texas in June 2016 and has had iterations with Chris Sloan and Enrique Perella and has gone through Venezuela, India, to Farnborough in the UK, to Malaysia, to South Africa, to the Middle East, to Chicago.
Where are you based now, Vinay?
I live in New York.
Now we're in New York. Un verano Nueva York. That is.
Verano in Nueva York. So we're like, okay, good. Because last time we recorded, I was in Florida. Now I'm in New York as well.
DJ Rohan play Nueva York by Bad Bunny. And Chicago.
All right, guys. Well,
this was epic. I love y'all.
Epic.
And our hearts, our thoughts go out to.
How much I missed having this in my life.
Yes, and our hearts and thoughts go out to the families, relatives, anyone impacted by AI 171, and other aviation tragedies that have happened in 2025. We do want to acknowledge that the one phoenix from the ashes that rises from aviation disasters, crises, is that new information and new data equals new knowledge and better preparedness and awareness and readiness to help us all come back to care. And so check in. I did a meditation tonight. Helped me a lot. I love my dog. I love my fitness. I love my music. But just breathing sometimes, doing something internally and spreading that love from human to human. That's why we believe in the skies and soaring. So coming back to that notion, yeah, this is all a letter of love. It's so enriching. It's a passion project. Vinay and I just kind of found. Helwing, you're part of our circle too. And yeah, next recording live will probably be in New York, and the next episode, well, like Dr. Dre says, we'll just wait for the next episode.
Okay, that sounds apropos. Can people subscribe to the podcast the same places they always subscribe to the podcast?
Yes.
Apple Music, Spotify.
Apple Music, Spotify. Yes, in all the channels, all platforms, we are back online, guys. So
Awesome.
And to all our listeners and subscribers, it's great to be back. with Vinay and Rohan.
Yeah.
And I can start maybe even DJing for us because,
Right.
hey, you know, my Latin American side is essentially Puerto Rican, and in the spirit of synergy, we're gonna listen to a little Bad Bunny as our closing outro.
Wait, are you
Ya está frío, ¿cuándo se acaba?
Right, struck in our first episode back? What's happening right now? Play some
All
really
right.
creamy or try to keep it
Yes, yes. You have a prediction. You have a prediction. All right, guys. Thank you so much. It's been a wonderful chat. We'll see you in the next episode.
Si te quieres divertir.
All right. Hold your phone. Hold your Rohan texted me without he texted me and hear me? Yeah.
Yeah.
Rohan texted me. I didn't let him finish what he was gonna tell me, and so I was like, let's record, and that was it.
Okay. Well, because
I don't know if you wanted to tell me something else, actually, but
Well, no, I was just